So we'll start by setting up your props. I'd like for you, as you're facing the front of your mat, to put a blanket to the left and also put your bolster off to the left. They're not going to be perfect, but at least they'll be accessible when we need them. Your strap is going to go just to the right side. And if you would like to prepare that strap in advance, you could make a loop in it, because you'll probably need a loop when we get to it. So today we're going to work on hip flexors. Yay! Everybody needs that, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Okay, so once you've got your loop made and you have your props established, I'm going to have you come to your belly with your head toward the front. Head toward the front. And bring your feet out wide, so your heels are about as wide as your mat. Rest your forehead or your cheek on your hands, or it could go on right directly onto the mat. It's up to you. And already noticing the pelvis. Already noticing the pelvis on the floor. And notice any subtle changes in the position of the pelvis as you breathe in and out. And then just so gently at first, start to rock your pelvis side to side, right to left. It's kind of a weird thing to do, I know. So take your time. Yeah. Just rock. Yeah, exactly. So however you interpret that is how it is meant to be done, okay? Today's practice is going to blend, as usual, some yin postures with some somatic work. So think of somatic work as purposeless, repetitive movements designed to influence your nervous systems, and especially your somatic nervous system, which is the nervous system that helps you move and experience movement. Now notice, is your pelvis kind of pushing side to side? Or could you target something a little bit different, which is more like an up and down? So when the right hip moves down and to the right, your left hip moves up. And when your left hip moves down and to the left, your right hip moves up. That might feel a little more challenging to you. It does to me. And as you're still kind of processing this, know that you can take a break whenever you need to, and that you should absolutely find a breathing strategy that makes sense for you here. Even if that's just making sure that you are, in fact, breathing. Okay, now rest for a moment. Just rest. Let the pelvis just find a rested position, and don't worry if it is or feels symmetrical at all. That's not important. Instead, perhaps just notice any differences side to side without judging them, without needing to change anything. Okay. So with your feet still pretty wide, I'm going to have you bend your knees so your feet are pointed up to the sky. And again, do your side to side up and down movement. And let your legs move with your pelvis. So when you're tilted to the right, your legs are going to the right. And when you're tilted to the left, your legs are going to the left. Let the ankles be as relaxed as possible. Sometimes the ankles think that they can do it for your pelvis. They can't. They could try, but they can't. So, yeah, good. And again, notice, are you more favoring a side to side, or could you potentially target an up and down? Maybe you'd like to practice side to side and practice up and down, one hip and then the other, or even combining the two. Sky's the limit. Let those legs move with your pelvis. Let your legs move with your pelvis. Yeah, almost like you're making windshield wiper movements side to side. Yes. There. Ooh, okay, yeah. And then just rest. So come back to the center. Allow the legs to return to the floor. Take a few breaths. Again, an opportunity to notice. Notice what may have changed. Since the last time you noticed. Okay, so let's bend the knees again, pointing your toes up. And this time, I'm going to make it a little bit more challenging. Rock your pelvis side to side, up, down. But this time, try to keep your shins as vertical as you can. So try not to let the lower legs move. Yes. And this one is hard. This one's really hard. So if you're struggling with it, know that you're having a very typical response and that is actually the purpose. It's to try something different, something hard. Make sure to breathe. Make sure to breathe. And the next time you're tilting to the right, so that would mean the right hip is lower and further to the right, let your ankles go to the right as far as they can go. Let them go. And then come back to the center. Ankles, pelvis. Once again, tilt to the right, press down on the right. Let your ankles go as far to the right as you're able. And come back to the center. Last time. Tilt to the right, lean to the right, ankles to the right. Keep them as far over to the right as you can. Plant your left palm. Lift up a little so you can thread your right arm under your left arm. Come to your side with your ankles still to the right. Well, then now it feels like it's to your left, right? Yeah. And then lift up your head so you can see. Can you see your right foot? Can you lift up your right foot so you can see it? And maybe catch the foot in your left hand or grab that strap and wrap it over the top of your foot so you can hold that ankle with the strap instead of your hand. And continue to roll to your back. Your left shoulder probably won't touch. Yeah. Now the left leg, send it out to the right, either resting on the blanket or maybe you'll drag the bolster under your left leg if you need it. This is the cat pulling its tail pose. Cat pulling its tail pose. Wow, guys. Holy cow. Good job. So we'll hold here still with that very adaptive breath. So I have a lot of students and clients who have trouble with their hip flexors. Hip flexors that feel stiff, sometimes achy or painful. Hip flexors that restrict movement. And invariably, those students and clients come to me and they say, will you give me some stretches for my hip flexors because they're too stiff? And I say, no, I will not. Because stretching an area that's already very stiff, very protective, is not likely to change its function or resting state. And that's based on science. Let's take 2 more breaths. In cat pulling its tail, you guys are doing brilliantly. Now release the right foot from your left hand or the strap. Go ahead and extend it out long. Roll back onto your right side and bring your left knee and ankle out onto that blanket if they aren't already, with a little bend in the left knee. Come to your elbows so you're on your belly, once again in that prone position. Come to your elbows and slide your left knee out into a half frog. Yes, make sure your knee and your ankle are supported by that blanket. And if you'd like, you could stay here in the Sphinx, or you can come back down to your forehead or your cheek. And I know it's really hard, but it's supposed to be. Come back to that rocking your pelvis side to side, hips moving slightly up and down. And certainly you'll find some spots that feel stiff, that feel a little more intense. And for some reason, we feel compelled to kind of hammer away on those spots. I would like for you to actually take it easy on those places. Just keep the breath and the movement very soft, calm. Keep the attention very curious. Let's do a couple more, please, side to side. You guys are doing great at this. And then just rest. Just rest in your half frog. Let's take one more breath. One more breath. And the half frog. And you'll send your left leg out long again, so both feet are wide on your mat. Back to the position in which you began your practice. Maybe you'll take another opportunity to observe what may have changed, what has remained the same. Sometimes one side feels heavier, warmer, bigger, or just more apparent. And then bring your hands back to frame your chest. And come back to a tabletop. Come to all fours. And let's take this opportunity now. Actually, no, keep it there. So let's not take the opportunity. I'll wait for that. So with your hands roughly under your shoulders, your knees roughly under your hips, move yourself forward and back. Rock yourself forward and back. You don't have to go far. And see if in your mind's eye you can isolate your pelvis. So your whole body is shifting, right? But think about the position of your pelvis and its relationship to the spine, the thighs. And the next time you've moved forward, I'll have you stay and then circle off to the right, then go back over to the left and forward. And again, let's keep the mind's eye on the pelvis. So we're still doing that side to side, up and down. We've just added a little more stuff. And find a neutral. Bring your right leg straight out to the right. That's going out to the side. And see if you can get the sole of your foot to plant. Yeah? Yeah, good. And hopefully you've got space and your foot will slide a little, because I'd like for you to come back to those hip circles and let your foot slide. You might find that it's making some rough circles on the floor as you kind of drag the leg and then push the leg with the pelvis. And now that you've got this movement, once again, bring your mind's eye to the pelvis, moving side to side, forward, back, up and down. Allowing that foot to make some little circles. And if you're coming off of your heel, your toes, or whatever, that's okay. No need to push into the foot. The leg is just a bystander. And then come back to neutral. Just let the foot rest. This time I'd like for you to firmly plant the sole of that foot onto the floor and circle the hips again. So you won't move your foot. You're really isolating the pelvis. And you might find that this is really hard. You might even start to kind of tremble a little bit because it's actually quite challenging. Lots of sensations, lots of muscles recruiting in ways that they probably don't on a regular basis, which is why this feels so sweetly challenging. Let's just do one more circle. That's great. Okay, then walk your hands over to the left a little. Bring your left foot to the right and slightly forward so you can sit down behind your left heel. And then bring your right heel to the right front corner. So the sole of the left foot is against the right inner thigh. Right leg is nice and wide. If you'd like, you can bring your bolster around in front of you just in case. Perhaps your blocks as well. We're not going to use them yet, but we might. You might want them, so have them there. If it's difficult to sit up tall here, of course, you could also put your blanket under your butt. That'll help. So turn your heart, your eyes, your nose toward that right leg. And move your pelvis, the right side of your pelvis forward. So it's like you're driving your right hip forward. And then your left hip went back, right? Yeah. And then do the opposite. Drive your right hip back. Take this nice and easy. It's a normal human compulsion, from what I can tell, to try to do the most possible when we're asked to do something by a yoga teacher. I'm not asking for the most possible. I'm actually asking for ease, sweetness, curiosity. Feel free to position your hands on you or on the floor, however you need to, so that you can explore this. And why not notice the hip flexors? Hip flexors are on the front of the hip. They are the muscles which are responsible for flexing your hip, bringing your thigh closer to your belly. Let's do a couple more. Yeah. And the next time the right hip is moving back, you'll stay. Lean forward over that right leg any amount. And here's where, if you'd like, you could build a Stonehenge over your right leg so that you can lay down your forehead, or maybe you're going to put your elbows on that Stonehenge and rest your forehead in your hands. Keep it mild. In yin yoga, we keep our poses pretty mild. We're substituting those deep sensations for duration. So the reason that I do not like to give my students stretches for their tight hip flexors is because your hip flexors don't function in a vacuum. No muscle in your body functions independently. They function at the will of your nervous systems. Not just the somatic nervous system, all of the systems. Central nervous system, peripheral, autonomic. And so to address the stiffness by simply wailing on hip flexors with a stretch would really be missing the mark and pretty ineffective. Let's take 2 more breaths. In the half butterfly. Okay. You'll use your hands to help you press back up to vertical. I always like to take a moment in vertical, neutral, not rotated. Just close the eyes, just feel stuff. And the blanket and the blocks go to the right. Setting up so that you're prepared for the cat pulls its tail and the half frog in a little bit. If you're using a strap, it goes to the left. And then swing those legs around behind you and come back to your belly. And even as you're still arriving, bring those feet a little wider and start rocking your pelvis side to side, up and down. And then bend the knees. And as your pelvis rocks side to side and up and down, allow the feet to drop side to side as well, like you're doing some windshield wipers, basically, from your belly. And then I'll have you come to a neutral position. Keep your shins as vertical as you can. As you rock your pelvis side to side and up and down. Keep your shins as vertical as you can. And it's highly possible that you'll start to shake a little. This is not easy. I have a pretty smart hip flexors. I've been working on mine for a long time, not to mention glutes. Not bragging or anything, but this is hard for me. And the next time you're tilted to the left, allow those ankles to fall to the left as well. Your right hip will leave the floor. And then come back just to the middle. Press down the left hip, let it lean to the left as your ankles drop to the left. We're only going to the left now, not alternating. Then come back. This is the last one. So press down to the left, drop to the left, stay. Press your right palm down into the floor or the mat. Thread your left arm under and just come to your left side. Look towards your left foot and then lift your left foot up. See if you can grab it with your hand. If you can't, use the strap, loop it around. The right leg is going to extend out in front of you, and maybe it's going to be resting on something. If your leg has a tendency to slide away from you, it probably needs to be elevated. Coming over. And then roll all the way to your back. I'll take this. I'm going to go this way, actually. Beautiful, Kathy. Yeah, great. Very nice, Amy. So if our goal is to, quote, release the hip flexors, then we'll have to address not just the tissues, but also the somatic nervous system. That's the way you move and experience movement. The central nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system. All of those will have to be on board. Let's take one more breath in these beautiful poses. Okay, so release the foot, release that left foot, and roll back onto your side. Send the bottom leg out long. I was just coming over to get that for you. And bring the right knee right knee and ankle onto the blanket and slide the knee out as far as it'll go. Rolling to your belly. Initially come to the elbows. Initially coming up to the elbows to a sphinx position. That's going to help you get yourself positioned. Yeah, great. And then when you're ready, if you'd like, you can stay on the elbows or you can come down to your forehead. Yeah. Actually, stop. And ever so gently rock side to side, up and down. So gently. Remember, your compulsion will be to go as deep as you can. That is not necessary, nor is it desirable. Let's take one more breath, half frog. Okay. Bring your right leg back nice and wide. Yeah. Take a breath. Notice some stuff. And then please plant your hands just to the outsides of your chest and come back to your tabletop, all fours. And even this time, as you're still arriving on all fours, start to shift your pelvis forward and back. And if you can, just isolate that pelvis in your mind's eye so that you're aware of its movement forward and back, but also other movements that are occurring. And with a little bit of special attention to the hip flexors, since we've already been attending to them, maybe those can take on an extra special amount of importance in your attention. And the next time you come forward, you're going to stay and then shift to the left and go back and to the right, forward. Noticing those hip creases without trying to change anything, just notice. Find a neutral. I like to bring my right knee a little bit closer in so it's under my pelvis a little more. And then bring that left leg straight out to the left with the foot planted. Yeah, it could be on the blanket if you needed to slide or you have socks on. And as your pelvis goes forward, left, back, and right, and forward, your foot is sliding around. I hope. It may not be perfect, but you're making some kind of circles. Not needing to push down into that foot at all. The leg's just a bystander. It's just along for the ride. Notice what's going on in the right hip flexors, especially. Find a neutral. This time, keep your foot planted, and the circles are in the same direction without allowing the foot to move around much or any. One more. Yeah. From neutral, walk your hands off to the right. Maybe your right foot moves to the left so you can sit behind it. Yeah, and then your left leg is going to swing forward so your heel is on the front corner. You could be sitting on a blanket if necessary. Left leg is long, sole of right foot is to the inner thigh. Let's take those props in front of you so that if you'd like, you can make a Stonehenge in a little bit. And then use your hands however you want. They can be on your body, they can be on the floor. Press your left hip forward, your right hip goes back. Left hip back, right hip goes forward. And if you've kind of gotten stuck in one technique, try something different just for these last couple of repetitions. Try something you haven't tried yet. And the next time the left hip is back, you'll stay. Set up your Stonehenge if you'd like. And then fold over that left leg onto your props. Support your head somehow. And so to uncover a really, truly effective way to release the hip flexors, I think we'll have to go way, way back to a fundamental truth, not just about you and your hip flexors, but life. All the way back to a fundamental truth about life. Living things adapt. All cells adapt. They adapt toward survival. They adapt to conserve energy, to make the daily stuff you do all the time more energy efficient. Easier for you to do safely. So a lot of people come to me and they say, well, my hip flexors are really tight because I sit all day at my desk. And that's partially true. Your hip flexors have adapted to a stiffer position to support what you're doing day in and day out. Thank you, hip flexors, for making it easier for me to sit at my desk. Let's take one more breath and a half butterfly. And use your hands to help you come back up. Unwinding, so no rotation, just let your hands rest. Maybe you close your eyes for a second and feel some stuff. And then set your bolster off to the side. In case you want to use it in a little bit for Shavasana, just keep it within reach. Just keep a block in the center of your mat. The other block you won't need again. And if you'd like, you can put a blanket at the back of your mat for your head to rest on. Make sure that blanket isn't too thick. And then go ahead and come on down to your back with your head toward the back of your mat, resting on that blanket, and your 2 feet flat. 2 feet flat, and then bring your feet out as wide as your mat. 2 feet standing on the floor. 2 feet standing flat on the floor, soles of the feet flat on the floor, with your knees bent, and as wide as your mat. Lift up your right hip, tilt your hips over to the left. Let your thighs go with your pelvis. And then come back through center and go to the right. So it's the same movement you were doing from your belly. We're just doing it now in a supine position. See if you can remember some of the stuff that you tried when you're on your belly, though. Let's not let those lessons go to waste. Legs are going with the pelvis, dropping side to side. It's kind of like you're doing windshield wipers, right? Except for we've got a slightly different emphasis than usual. Okay. And come back to a neutral position. Keep your thighs now vertical. Don't let your thighs shift. As you tilt to the left, your right hip will lift, your left hip is maybe going to lean a little left, but your thighs are going to stay pretty vertical. And then you come back to a resting position in the middle. Okay, let's go to the left again. You're not going to get a lot of bang for your buck here if you're keeping your thighs steady, right? This is super isolated. And then rest. So each time you come to that middle position, you rest, and then let's just do a couple more repetitions. Keeping those thighs as steady as possible. Okay. So then bring your heels a little closer to your butt, just a little bit. This time when your pelvis tilts to the left, let your legs go to the left as far as you want. And come back to the center. So we're only going to go to the left. Maybe you creep your left heel even, your right heel a little bit closer to your butt. Drop over to the left. Pelvis leads the way. And come back to the center. So some of you can even bring your right heel closer to your butt and wider. That's going to get a little bit more of the tension across the front of the hip. And it's also going to be very intense for the knee. So you don't have to continue to move back if that's getting to an uncomfortable place for you. Let's do a couple more. Remember, let the pelvis be the leader here and the thighs just go with. Okay. And the next time your pelvis leads, the thighs to the left, you're going to stay and just let those knees just drop. Maybe your right knee is resting on the block. Maybe it needs to be higher with that more extreme position of the heel. Maybe you don't need the block at all. Maybe your thighs are going to come all the way down. I think you don't need this. I will have this happen though. Yeah. Is that okay? Okay. We'll put that there in case. So your hip flexors adapted to a shorter position to accommodate your sitting. But we also know that when we are in a stress response, like we really frequently are at work these days, the long muscles of the lower body tend to prime themselves. They get a little tense because, well, the stress response is sympathetic nervous system, fight or flee. So it makes sense that the long muscles would get ready to fight or flee. They don't necessarily know that you getting a snarky email from your coworker isn't the same as being chased by a lion through the forest. So it's not just the position you're in, it's also the state of the nervous system that's influencing the tissues. Let's just take one more breath here. You'll bring both of those knees up nice and easy. And take a moment just to rest. You might even let your knees fall together. And then knees apart again, you'll start to rock side to side. Your pelvis, your thighs go with you in both directions. Bring your feet as wide as your mat. So some of you, if you have got really long legs, your feet are actually standing almost on the outsides of your mat. Knees go with the pelvis, but let the pelvis be the leader, please. Yeah, great job. And then come back to the middle. We'll keep those thighs vertical. Tilt this time to the right. Keep the thighs vertical. Don't let them move. Don't let the thighs move. Tilt to the right and come back to the center. Don't let the thighs move. Keep them still. It's going to be a tiny movement. Yeah, good. And it doesn't have to be effortful, right? You could keep it in an easeful place, which, based on what I've just told you, seems like the winning strategy. To keep it in an easeful place. Because even to have an aspiration, a goal, an ambition requires a little bit of sympathetic nervous system activity, right? So keep it easeful, keep it curious. And the next time you're going to let your knees go with your pelvis to the right. You're going to go all the way over as far as you can with your knees and your pelvis. And then you're going to come back to the center. And I'll do it 3 more times. You have an opportunity to bring your left heel closer to your butt and a little wider each time. Closer to your butt and a little wider each time, if you'd like. Yeah. And again, there's always that kind of moment when you kind of forget, oh yeah, I was letting my pelvis do it. I wasn't just going through the motions, right? Let's make this the last one. You're going to go over and you're going to come back. And then you're going to stay. You're going to go all the way over to the right. Pelvis lead the way. Heel close to your butt and a little wider, especially if you are pretty flexible. Your heel could go wider and even closer towards your right wrist even. Yeah, good. And if you need to, because this is a little more intense, the block could be under your knee. Or if you're very flexible, your knee could drop all the way down. It's up to you. And you'll stay. Stay in the windshield wipers. Off to the right. Yeah. So it seems to me then, based on what I've told you, that if we really want to, quote, release the hip flexors, that we'll have to have a much more multi-dimensional approach than simply stretching. This approach will have to address not just those muscles, which are, I'm sorry, muscles are amazing, but they're also pretty dumb. They're just protein. So yeah, you'll address the protein. But you'll also address the somatic nervous system. You'll allow other muscles in the area, like your glutes, for example, to help out. And you'll address the autonomic nervous system. We'll take one more breath, please. You'll return to the center. And take a moment there just to observe side to side. If you'd like, you can let your 2 knees fall together, but you don't have to. I'd like to give you the option to drag the bolster under your thighs for your Shavasana if you would like. Or maybe you want to test out those nice relaxed hip flexors by extending the legs straight out onto the mat. If that block is there, just move it out of the way if it's in your way. Those heels as wide as your mat, toes flop out to the sides. And one more time, just notice, compare side to side without needing to make any changes. And then let all that noticing go. Just let the mind fall back. For your Shavasana. It's time to deepen the breath. Time to restore movement. When you're ready, find your way onto the side of your choice. Roll into your hands, rise to your seat. Press your palms together in front of your heart. Namaste.